I'm an old guy. What does an old guy from what I do, from the other side of the tracks, from an affluent neighborhood, have in common with these guys is that I'm able to say Dr. King did not spend the weekends maybe on the street corner, hanging out, getting in trouble. Do you think that maybe he was in a library? And all of a sudden you see the lights go on the kids' faces, and they go, oh, so then it comes down to empowerment, and you say, if he can do it, maybe you can too. And then we point to the president, and I go, it does say here that he went to Yale. Okay, now, how do you get into Yale? And then the kids will raise their hand and say, well, you have to be smart, and they have this or that, and I go, he did it. How do you think he did it? Do you think he did it because he was on the streets and he had a troubled background? It wasn't all cakewalk for the president. How did he do it? If he can do it, so now there's two guys on the wall who've done it. And what is the excuse now on your part? And sometimes you see the lights go on in these kids' faces, because now all of a sudden the old guy in the room who's giving this lecture, and they're kind of slouching in the chair, all of a sudden they're going, you know what, maybe there's something to this message. And it sort of transforms them into, yes, you can make the choices no matter how tough it is. I know it's not easy. And yes, the neighborhood is challenging, but you can make the choices to change your own life. Not an easy game, and I tell them it's not easy. It wasn't easy for Dr. Martin Luther King, and of course he gave his life for it, but it's not easy for the president. However, he was able to make it. And then, I use some other African Americans or Hispanics that have been very famous. They all knew who Colin Powell was, but, many people don't realize Colin Powell was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Kids don't know who that is, and I point out that's probably the guy who is the second most powerful guy in the country, or lady in the country if they have that position, because guess what? The whole military circles up through Colin Powell. How do you think he got there? Do you think he spent time, messing around, or do you think he was really, really serious when he was growing up? When you see that and you point that out, the hopelessness and despair, you can't change it from some of the inner cities. When you deal with the inner cities, whether it's South Central LA, and I'm sure it's the same in Oakland and Philadelphia and the Bronx, but when you point out that there are people who are role models, and role models other than, and Jeff, you brought it up, other than the basketball players, other than the athlete, there are role models out there that are doctors and lawyers and presidents and generals who have emerged and have shown the way. The doors are open. It's a matter of just making the decision. And again, sometimes it's so frustrating when you talk to some kids down there and they just say, I can't identify with what you're talking about. And there, Jeff, is a challenge when you talk to a kid down there in South Central. I'm not going to name the school because it's a challenge school. They point out that, we've been shot at.
Right.
Our football games are on Thursday afternoon at 4 because of the gangs. Jeff, how could that possibly be in modern day America where, and by the way, they just went back to Friday Night Lights, but we all know the movie Friday Night Lights, and that's history is that our high schools we're proud of, and we all go to the high school football game, and it's the big deal. And some of these kids have to go on either Friday afternoon or Thursday afternoon because they're afraid of gang violence. How can that? I just get overwhelmed and sort of depressed when you think about that. And so, what we try to do, and the cliche is, we all, or maybe everybody's heard the story of the grandfather and his grandson walking on the beach after a major storm, and all the starfish are rolled up on the beach. And of course, the sun's on the starfish, and we know the starfish aren't going to survive. And the little boy is taking the starfish and putting him in the water. And the grandfather says to the little boy, look, you can't possibly make a difference. There's so many starfish. And the little boy goes, makes a difference to this starfish, and he puts it in the water. What we need is a huge amount of effort on the part of individuals to say, enough is enough. We can't go further as a nation unless we are able to take the folks that are missing out on the dream. If you don't finish high school, and Jeff, even today, if you don't finish college, there are entrepreneurs out there who, Jeff and Bill Gates and those guys who just went for a little bit and they said, hey, I don't need that, but they are not the norm. If we can't get the inner city schools, which some of them have 50 and 60% dropout rates, how are those people going to survive the next 60 years of their life without being bitter or feeling angry or feeling that they're being left out? Because they are. And somehow we're failing. We're failing them. We're failing them no matter how much money we throw down there. We seem to be failing. And when you do the same thing the same way and expect different results, that's a definition of insanity. We're working, I'll tell you one exciting thing. We're working with Jefferson High School, and I'm on their advisory panel. So we're sitting there kicking around ideas, what do we do? And USC is right down the street. So when they came to me, I came up and I said, why don't we go to USC to adopt Jefferson? And we had a meeting with Greg Keyes. He's the head of the community relations. We called up there and were able to get the meeting. Now, a lot of people say, Rick, how can you get a meeting with Greg Keyes? I'm also on Reverend Cecil Murray, the famous civil rights leader. I'm on his board for social engagement. So I went to Reverend Murray, who teaches at USC. By the way, Reverend Murray teaches theology, in case those wondered whatever happened to the famous Reverend out of First AME. He now teaches up at USC. I went to Dr. Murray and I said, I need help. He called the president of USC, and then they called us and said, okay, let's have a meeting. So now we're working with USC and Jefferson in a pilot program to get USC, which is in the hood. USC is in the same neighborhood. I mean, as a bird flies, it can't be more than 6 miles between the two places. They're going to do some programs with Jefferson, but it was a matter of reaching out. Here you have USC in the neighborhood, and all they do is have the walls around the campus, but behind those walls are opportunity. And the school reached out to Jefferson, and I don't know where this thing is going to go, but it's taking on its own genesis. It's a matter of I mean, I can go on and on, Jim. I don't know where you want to go.
Right. No, that's perfect. That's perfect. You know what? I'm a good listener. You have to be a good listener to do this job, and do this job efficiently. So I listen attentively, so I can learn, so I can understand. I know what I know, but I don't know what this gentleman knows. But I'm learning today on exactly. We all learning today on what he knows. But anyway, it's a very exclusive interview with the Jeffrey Henderson Show. We have as our very special guest Rick Rozman in the house on the Jeffrey Henderson Show. You're listening to www.klasfm.com, 89.7 FM radio, Hollywood, where all of your dreams can come true. So now, next question about the students. Okay, what type of questions do they ask you when you mentoring them in a full session of 200, 300? What kind of responses do you get from them, and how can you help them?
It's been a trial and error and a trial of success, because we've been there's a principal for a day program that LAUSD uses, and Jefferson was the high school. That's how I got involved with Jefferson years ago. The first go around, first of all, I know there's going to be people listening who are going to say, oh my God, you went on the other side of town where it may not be safe to a troubled school to get involved. I assure you, if you make the leap of faith, nothing is going to happen. In fact, they were very excited when they saw us there. So make the leap, and don't just stay put in PV in Manhattan Beach. Reach out to those that are in need. Well, going down to Jefferson and talking to some of the kids has been enlightening for me. Is that, first of all, here I came down thinking I had the answers. I sure as heck do not have the answers, because the difference between what my kids have gone through. My kids were worried about what college are they going to go to, and it was never a choice that they weren't. And my kids were worried about all the issues that kids go through, from the prom and the junior prom and all those wonderful things. Then you start talking to those kids down in different areas and challenged areas of our economy, and they can't identify with that. I mean, they can't identify with a ski trip in Mammoth. They can't identify with a golf tournament. And I'll segue into something like this where we did make a difference. The Union Rescue Mission had a golf tournament. I went to Andy Bales, who runs the Union Rescue Mission, and I said, Jefferson, believe it or not, Jefferson High School has a golf team. And you think there's a golf team of an inner city high school. I said, can we get a foursome? And we bought a number of foursomes for other charities, but can we get a foursome for the Jefferson golf team? I said, by all means. Now, there was one issue there, because none of them were over 18, so they couldn't drive a golf cart, so we had to have somebody drive a golf cart. But we brought the Jefferson kids to Trump, which is exclusive golf course up in PV. Completely blew their minds. Watching these young people all day. We had Rosie Greer up there, who was mentoring the kids. There's some pictures, and Eric was up there. It was a great day. we transformed those kids' lives. They got to stay for the dinner. They got all of the bells and whistles that everybody else got. But it was, their coach came up to me afterwards and said, you know what, nobody's ever done this for our kids. Since then, we've sponsored the kids for a number of other golf programs, golf course charity events. We get to force them. We bring up the Jefferson students. They have an absolute blast. But talking to the kids while you're there, they just kind of look